Hi team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about Domain 3 coffee shots of CC of ISC2 exam. Thanks for showing your immense support on the Domain 1 and Domain 2, and for that reason we come up with the Domain 3 coffee shots, and I'm sure these coffee shots can be very useful to understand the Domain 3 content of CC exam. My name is Prabh Nair. For more information you can check my LinkedIn profile. And if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with the first coffee shot. Which access control model have a very limited user functionality, require lot of administrative overhead and extremely expensive and are not user friendly? Okay, so when you're talking about the first control, which is called MAC basically called as a mandatory access control. In this, what happened, we have a static rules. Example, we have a top secret, we have a secret, and we have a confidential example, and we have a group also. Example, like we have a senior management, we have a management, and we have a practitioner example. So what happened in the mandatory access control? Mandatory access control means this is the mandatory rules we have. So here we have a data. So data has been labeled as a top secret. So any data basically labeled as a top secret, it is only accessible to senior management. If the data has been labeled as a secret, it is available to management. If data has been labeled as a confidential, it is available to only practitioner. So here what happened is, we subject required the clearance level and object is basically required this classification, and this is a static. So if any data comes, it need to be part of either top secret, secret and confidential. So it's called as a mandatory access control. Okay, so there is no option to customize. So if we have adding more and more data, we are limited to add in this particular area only. That's why the question say that which access control model have a very limited user functionality, require a lot of administrative overhead and extremely expensive. So Mac is basically very expensive. Okay, one more example, you can take Linux. In Linux, any activity you want to do, you need to run a sudo command. In Microsoft, if you want to run any kind of an activity, you need to run admin command. So that is a perfect example of the mandatory access control. Second is called as a DAC. In the DAC, what happened? Discretionary access control. Let's take an example. Discretionary basically means distributed. So we have a user 1, we have a user 2, and we have a user 3. User 1 basically create a folder, user 2 basically create a folder, user 3 create a folder, and they basically decide who can access, who cannot. Is it clear? So user 1 can decide who can access my folder, user 2 can decide who can access their folder, and user 3 can decide who can access their folder. Okay, so we have a different permissions. It's more customization, more flexibility there. But here the question talking about limited user. Third is basically called as a RBAC. In the RBAC, what happened? We create a group. Example, we have a backup operator, we have a network operator, we have a system operator. If user basically add to backup operator, he will carry the backup operator permission across the organization. If user basically add to network operator, he will carry all the network operator permission across the organization. If user is basically added to the system operator, he will carry the entire system operation across the organization. So any question talking about job based, role based, function based, answer is RBAC. And the fourth is basically called as a RUBAC. RUBAC is called as a rule based access control. So if you take an example of firewall, in firewall we create a rule. Okay, so we say if source is this, destination is this, if source IP is this, destination IP this, if condition match, the connection will be rejected or connection will be accepted. So that is how we define the context. So that is basically called as a rule-based access control. But in this question, the keyword was limited user functionality, required lot of administrative overhead and extremely expensive. So these are the keywords we have, and that is why the reason we go with the mandatory access control, because it is basically fixed. There's no option to customize and all that. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay, so question is, which access control simplify access control administrations by allowing permissions to be managed in terms of user job role? The keyword is basically user job role. So option A MAC, option B DAC, option C RBAC, and option D RUBAC. We already discussed any question talk about job, roles, function. Answer is basically RBAC. That's why the answer is basically, answer is C for Charlie. Okay. Let's move to the next coffee shot. It's a very good question. Which type of access control primarily utilized in a high security environment? High security basically mean rigid, static, fixed. Okay, that is called high security environment. We need to make sure, in a high security environment, visibility required. If you add too much functionality, then it is difficult to manage the functionality. Okay, so we keep the functionality limited, which we can able to control. So any question talking about high secure environment, clearance, classifications, DoD, Department of Defense, answer is MAC. Because in attack, what happened, different user have a different permissions. They have a different kind of a ownership to define who can access, who cannot. So when the multiple functions are involved, it is difficult to manage. And that is never be a preference in the high security environment. So B is removed. Even you're creating a multiple group, we need to add a user to the group. One concern is there, once the user added to the group, he will get all the privilege. And tomorrow if hacker hack that account, he get all the privilege. So we never recommend that in a high secure environment. Rollback is also dynamic in nature, so that is ultimately removed. So no matter which user is coming, what clearance level we have, it need to go through a static rule. That is called as a mandatory access control. So that is why in this case, answer is basically A for alpha. Okay, A for alpha. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. So which type of account represent a high value target and require more protection? See, if you ask me, okay, as a hacker, okay, I will definitely look for those accounts which carry a multiple privilege, because I just need to invest one-time activity. I just need to invest some time on that. And once I control that account, once I take over the account, I can basically hack in the next level. So question talking about which type of account represent the high value target. Option A, privilege account. Definitely that will be my privilege. Okay, because if I hack admin accounts and all that, I know very well I can take over the entire system. Okay, and from a security point of view, I need to give more attention to that account. User account does not have much privilege. Okay, but definitely it also has some privilege, but compared to privilege account, user account has a less privilege. Service account, okay, so it's all talk about a particular service, but in a privilege account, it deal with multiple services. File account, there's nothing called as a file account. Okay, so only close option which is left is, the answer is A for alpha. It's enough coffee. Let's have some snacks. So this is called as a snacks. Any question talk about owner, user, centric, ACL, answer is basically DAC. Anything talk about lot of flexibility, user, less administration, answer is basically DAC, because power is given to the user. Any question talking about government, clearance, label, NDAC, strict access control, need to know, answer is basically MAC. And any question talk about user job roles, best system for company, high turnover, answer is basically RBAC. So I'm sure these snacks can be very useful while preparing for this particular topic. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. What is the ultimate objective of a proper separation of duty? The question talking about ultimate objective of proper separation of duty. Separation duty is basically introduced to prevent the fraud. Actually, I don't want one person to have an end-to-end control over the one task by which he can commit the fraud. How? Example, like he can create a bill, he can sign the bill, he can basically approve the bill and take the fund from the company. If he does end-to-end all three activity, so there is a possibility he can commit a fraud where he can create a fake bill, he can sign fake and take the money out from the bank, which I don't want that. Okay, so ultimate goal of separation duty is to split this activity. Person 1 will create a bill, person 2 sign the bill, and person 3 will approve the bill. So if person 1 want to commit a crime or commit any kind of fraud, he need to involve person 2 and person 3. Then only the transaction will be approved or complete. And that is the reason primary goal of separation duty is to prevent the fraud. So option A is to prevent employees from disclosing sensitive information. Separation duty is not limited to only confidentiality, also talk about integrity. So that is not a primary objective. Option B, to ensure access control are in place. Okay, but how we audit? Because separation duty itself is a control. Option C, to ensure no single individual can compromise the system, which is actually true. Power is not limited to one person. And option D is to ensure that audit trails are not tampered with, which does not even connect with the question. So close answer is basically C for Charlie. Okay, let's move to the next coffee shot. So which of the following is an example of administrative control? See, before going to discuss this question, I want to discuss some snacks that give you better visibility, okay? And then we'll come to this question. So when you're talking about controls, we have a three type of control stream. One is basically called as a technical control, the control that you implement technical in nature. Example, firewall is a technical control because in that we create a rules. Whenever packet is passed through the firewall apply the technical logics, and according to that, they inspect the technical data and take a call. Whenever virus attack the system, antivirus basically scan the virus, and according to that, it take a call. So technical control is something technical in nature. Second is called as a physical control, something you implement physically. Example, door, locks and all that, that is physical control. Third is basically called as a administrative control. Administrative control is all about something administrative in nature, like guideline instructions given by the management. Example, tomorrow company has announced that there will be a lockdown. Okay, people have to come and people have to work from office, or people have to work from home. So it's a instructions, it's a guideline which is used to control the behavior of the people. We creating a policy in the organization, we creating a law in the organization, that is called as a administrative control. Okay, so administrative is something instructions, behaviors, directions given to the employees. Okay, that is called administrative control. Physical control, something you install physically, which block physically, check physically, detect physically. Example like security guard. Security guard has been appointed physically. So anyone who coming, he will inspect them physically and try to prevent him to access the facility. Okay, we install the lock. So that is also the example of the physical control. And technical control, we have a firewalls and all that. So that is how you can basically define the controls. So let's go back to the question. So if you read the question, it says which of the following is an example of administrative control? Option A, encryption, but encryption is basically a technical control. Separation duty makes sense because it's like an instruction you give which ensure that okay, one person will not perform end-to-end duty. That is a different story. Further on a technical level, we apply that, but it is introduced as a administrative in nature that okay, one person will not perform end-to-end duty. So for me, B is a very close answer. Installing a physical camera is a physical installation which detect physically. So it's not a administrative control. And firewall configuration is always technical in nature. So only option which is basically left is B for beta. Okay, let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay, so what is the most important feature of biometric identification system? See, when we're talking about authentication, basically have a three factor: something you know, something you have, and something you are. Something you know is basically called as a password. Something you have is basically called as a smart card, and something you are basically called as a biometric. Okay, so when we say what is the most important feature of biometric identification system, option A, authorization. Authorization is not an important feature because it is an authentication solution. So A removed. Storage requirement is one of the necessary requirement because in biometric what happened is first time when any user registered, suppose we are registering the fingerprints. So first time when you basically place the finger on the scanner will basically read the fingerprints and store the information in a form of template. Next time when you basically place the finger, they will capture that particular template and compare again the stored template. So A and B is removed. So storage is not an important feature. Third is accuracy. Exactly, because biometric basically ensure you are the same person who claim to be. So accuracy is important, and without accuracy, reliability cannot be achieved. So only close option here is basically C for Charlie. So we need to make sure biometric should work accurately. Biometric should work accurately. Now in the biometric, I just want to go a bit off the topic. In biometric, we have a two type of errors. Okay. One is basically called as a FAR and one is basically called as a FRR. FAR stands for false acceptance rate. False acceptance rate. And FRR basically stands for false rejection rate. Now what is the difference? In the case of false acceptance rate, it means in that case there is a possibility unauthorized user falsely accepted by the machine. That is called FAR. And FRR is basically where even the authorized user rejected by the machine. It happens when you're riding a bike and all that, and you basically place your fingers on the scanner. The scanner could not able to recognize. Then you rub your finger properly, clean your finger properly, and then you basically place again. So in that case, there is a possibility machine can accept. So in the data center kind of area, it is good to have a high FRR. And FAR is basically like I try to mimic one of my friend voice and try to fool the system, and by which I try to authenticate and access the system. So that is called as a false acceptance rate. Okay, so that is basically called as a FAR and FRR. So in biometric, the most important thing is accuracy. Let's move to the next question. Okay, which of the following approaches design, building, and space that emphasize passive feature to reduce the likelihood of a criminal activity? Now there's a three keywords are there: design, building, likelihood. We're not saying preventing, but likelihood of a criminal, reducing the likelihood. It means we are acting like a deterrence control. It means we're talking about the design principle which we adopt, by which we reducing the deterrence, or we increasing the deterrence, by which reducing the likelihood of a criminal activity. Like I want to demotivate the attacker to do the attack. Oh, so complex structures and all that. So which is a correct? So option is CPTD. CPTD called as a crime prevention through environmental design. It means we build the facility in such a way to prevent the crime. Example, we have a multiple fences, barbed wires, placement of camera, which basically deterrence the criminal. Second is security perimeter. Security perimeter is a very general term, and B is actually part of A. Okay, privacy design, it's all about the process by which we're integrating a privacy in the people, process, and technology. And last is basically called as a DMZ. DMZ is like a demilitarized zone, which is basically used to segment my internal network from internet. So the close answer, what you can see here is A, CPTD, because it is a design feature we adopt while building a facility. Okay, that's what the answer is, A for alpha. Let's move to the next question. Okay, which of the following strategy integrating people, technology, and operation capability to establish the variable barriers across multiple layer and mission of the organization? Three keywords are there: variable barriers, multiple layers, integrating PPT. Privacy design is only limited to privacy aspects, so A removed. Security perimeter strategy is also true. Network by design strategy is all about network, creating a topology, so D definitely removed. So B and C is there. C is basically part of the B. So defense in depth is what? It's a layer of controls that we create. Okay, so suppose this is my data center. So it is basically protected by physical security control, then technical security control, then administrative security control. If this is basically breaks, we have another control. If this is basically break, we have another control by which we reduce the likelihood. Okay, the keyword was multiple layers, and we introduce the defense in depth to reduce the attacks, also reduce the impact against the weakest link. And who is the weakest link? People. That's why the answer is B for beta. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, so which type of control primarily implemented and executed by information system, which is technical, through a mechanism contained in the firmware or software of the system? So question talking about we are implementing one control in the information system, which is technical in nature, and it is implemented by software or firmware, that is also technical. So option is technical control, that makes sense. Administrative is more like instructions, guidelines, and all that which we create. Okay, physical is something you install physical. There's nothing called as a service control. So only option is basically left is A for alpha. That's why the answer is technical control. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Which of the following is not an example of administrative control? Not. Policy procedure example. Personal control is an example. Acceptable use policy is an example of administrative control. Conducting a security awareness training, it's instruction, so it is also part of administrative control. Badge reader is a physical control because it's a physical badge. It's going to scan on the device, and then the gate will be open, and then you access. So it is more like a physical control. So that is not an administrative control. So that's why the answer is E for alpha. Sorry, E for elephant. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Which of the following is not an example of a physical control? Which of the following is not an example of physical control? Not. Security camera is an example of physical control. Physical cabling is an example of physical control. Badge reader, we already discussed, is an example of physical control. Appointment of guard is an example of physical control. What is not an example of physical control is a firewall, because in that we're creating a rules and logic by which we prevent the unauthorized traffic, and that is more like a technical in nature. That's why the answer is E for elephant. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Prince is working as a finance consultant in the organization. He was on a vacation for 15 days. After 15 days, he could not join the office and there was no further communication with the HR. What is the best practice you would like to recommend to the enterprise? Okay. Definitely, even in the case of termination, we never delete the account. So be removed. Call and check why he's not joining. Definitely that is there, but that is not the best. Modify the policy for one person, I will not. The first thing I'm going to do is the best practice, disable the account temporary. See his activity, and after according to archival policy and all that, then we basically delete the ID. So close option is basically A for alpha. So this is all from my side on domain 3. I'm sure it clarified a lot of doubts. I'm sure it clarified your doubts regarding this domain 3. And if you're looking forward for domain 4, do subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. And do let me know what is the best thing you like about the video, and do share your feedback in the comment section. And do let me know how soon you want the questions session of the domain 4, 5 and 6. Thank you for time, and I love my subscribers, and for that I'm here and I'm making more and more content to make their life better in information security and privacy. Thank you for your time. Bye. Take care.